You're listening to the Identity at the Center podcast. This is the show that talks about identity and access management and making sure you know who has access to what. Let's get started. Welcome to the Identity at the Center podcast. I'm Jeff, and that's Jim. Hey, Jim.
Hey, Jeff. How are you?
Not so bad. Yourself?
Good. My little piece for today is a little look behind the curtain, which just is basically for each episode, we do a preparation session. So we meet with all of our guests just to go over kind of what we're going to talk about, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the things that came out in our discussion with one of our guests, we have two guests today, but one of our guests, Kelvin, is that he had been to Augusta, Georgia, which is where I live. Augusta, Georgia is the home of the U.S. Army Cyber Command. And so that part was interesting. But to me, what was more interesting was that he said we have some very good watering holes, which I agree with. And, we're not going to talk about all those details on the call today or on the podcast today, but certainly I agree with Kelvin on that.
It is a very small world. And it is important to know where you can get a quality beverage to address any potential thirst issues that may arise. This is an important thing. You got to stay hydrated, right? So I can support that. Why don't we just dive right into it, because we do have a couple guests, and one of them is Kelvin Coleman. He's the Executive Director of the National Cybersecurity Alliance. Welcome, Kelvin.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. Really great to be here with you, Jim and Julie. And yes, maybe another podcast to talk about the Augusta watering holes.
We can do that. And yeah, you referenced our other guest, Julie Smith, who is making her second appearance, gracing us with her presence on the Identity at the Center podcast. She's the Executive Director of the Identity Defined Security Alliance. Welcome, Julie.
Jeff and Jim, always a pleasure to be with you, and thanks for inviting me back.
Anytime, and hopefully we might hear an appearance from Sly the Cat. We'll see if he will, deem us worthy of making an appearance via probably Julie's special microphone that she's probably got set up just for him, I bet.
Exactly, the Sly Cam.
So why don't we start with, where we normally start, and that is, how did you get into the IAM space or InfoSec area? Julie, why don't we start with you? I know we've been on the show before. For those who didn't catch that, how did you get into the IAM space?
Sure. So my career goes back more years than I'm willing to admit, and I started in technology with one of the, at the time, Big 8 accounting firms. And actually, I was in the software development organization. So that's sort of where I got my technology start. And then fast forward, again, a large number of years that we won't talk about. And I ended up at a little company based in Denver, Colorado called Ping Identity. And that's where I got my first entry into identity and access management. And that was in 2008. And spent some quality time there, learning about the industry and multiple roles. And then picked up the security side of my background at a company called Optiv. Again, headquartered here in Denver. And those two things together brought me to the Identity Defined Security Alliance, where I've been for full-time for the last 2 years, focused on this intersection of identity and security.
So what is the Identity Defined Security Alliance? Can you just recap it for us in a nutshell?
Sure. So the Identity Defined Security Alliance is a nonprofit organization, and we focus on educating and providing resources to primarily the security community about the importance of identity to security strategies. And so we have 26 member companies that cross the identity and security boundaries. And we also have 9 customer advisory board members who represent the practitioner community and sort of provide oversight to our vision, our mission, and help guide us. And we actually just announced a new customer advisory board member today, Bernard Diebecker, if I get that right, who's the chief enterprise security architect at Intuit. And so we're super excited to have him on board, and maybe at some point in time we can get him on your show.
Sure. We're always happy to talk with folks in the IAM space. I think that's really what we're all about. Kelvin, why don't we pass it over to you? This is your first time on the show, so we're always interested to hear, how did you get into InfoSec and the IAM space? And is it something that you chose, or did you choose it?
Well, Jeff, you point out it's the first time I'm on the show, and if I do a good job, maybe you invite me back. And if you don't invite me back, that tells me how I did. So it definitely chose me. I was staff director at the Department of Homeland Security for the President's National Security Telecommunication Advisory Committee, the NSTAC. And if you think about the red phone going from the White House to the Kremlin, kind of that lore. The NSTAC was sort of based around that. And then my supervisor at the time, Jenny Minna, said, hey, I need you to find out what's happening with cybersecurity. And I am around the country as it relates to state and local. And no one else was doing that at the time. So I became the de facto expert on state and local cybersecurity. And this is the early days, right, where people really were not thinking about it. And they'd much rather deal with Tokyo than Topeka. And I loved going to those state capitals around the country. And so it just evolved from there, left the department, went to the White House for a while, and then FireEye, where I was at the National Security Agency, and got a call from a friend saying, I really think you do well, Executive Director of National Cybersecurity Alliance. And here I am today, very happy with this role.
Well, we're happy to have you here. For folks who aren't familiar with the National Cybersecurity Alliance, can you talk about what that organization is all about?
Yeah, we are, and it may sound a bit self-serving for me to say, we're the premier public-private partnership in cybersecurity, right? We've been around for quite some time now. We are that facilitator between government and private sector as it relates to cybersecurity, education, awareness, and training. The three buckets that we like to talk about is we convene, we educate, and we amplify. And that's why working with Julie and IDSA is so great, because that last piece in particular, well, all of them actually, convening, educating, and amplifying, but we get to do that with a great organization. And that's what we do in a nutshell. We love partnerships. We develop and nurture and certainly try to grow them, which is one of the reasons I'm here today.
Julie, this show publishes on April 12th. Tomorrow, April 13th, is Identity Management Day. What is Identity Management Day, and how did it come about?
Yeah, so I guess great timing, actually, day before. So April 13th, the second Tuesday of April has been dubbed Identity Management Day. And it's a day to raise awareness about the importance of identity management and securing digital identities. Kind of think of it as, not as frequent as Taco Tuesday, for example, but, a day that we can all come together, hosted by the Identity Defined Security Alliance in partnership with the National Cybersecurity Alliance. And it came about from one of my member companies last fall. A company called Centrify brought it to us and said, we've done some research. We found that there is no specific day out there that raises awareness about, what we've all come to believe is a truly important topic. We think IDSA is the right organization to host that. So board, got together, talked about it, loved the idea. And we decided in doing some research that we would model it after something called Data Privacy Day, which happens in January, third week of January, and co-hosted by the NCSA. And so that's what caused me to reach out to Kelvin's team, Jen Cook and Justin Price at the NCSA, and start having a conversation with them about, hey, this is something that we would love to host. We'd love to partner with the NCSA. The IDSA really focuses our message towards security professionals inside organizations, whether it be enterprises or private or public sector, excuse me. In the NCSA, you guys do a lot of that as well, but you also have an angle from the consumer perspective, right? Helping consumers to stay safe online. And so we thought that it would be the perfect partnership for us to work together. And we launched it on February 23rd, or made the initial announcement about Identity Management Day coming up. And it's been nothing but positive since we've started that. There's lots of different ways for organizations to get involved. we have over 150 champions that have stepped up and said, we want to be recognized as either individuals or organizations or industry partners who recognize and evangelize for the importance of identity management and digital security or securing digital identities. And so it's just been nothing but a very positive experience all the way around.
Well, we all know what happens on Taco Tuesday. and boy, do we love it. We love it so much. But what is taking place on Identity Management Day, the April 13th?
Yeah, so tomorrow we have a couple of different events going on throughout the day that are hosted by either the IDSA or the NCSA. And then, we hope that there'll be other events. I'm aware of a few that haven't been announced yet, but other events that'll be hosted by other organizations that have latched on to this Awareness Day. So it starts off at 12 p.m. Eastern time with a LinkedIn Live webcast. And during that webcast, we'll announce the winners of the Identity Management Awards, which we just, again, launched as part of this day, Evangelist of the Year and Organization of the Year. And I'm excited to say that we had 22 people. Might be a couple of our hosts that might have gotten nominated as Evangelists of the Year. And we had 32 organizations nominated for Organizations of the Year. So super excited that we had that kind of response on our very first Awareness Day. So we'll announce those winners. And then we'll have a panel that will talk about the importance of Identity Management Day, and why, similar maybe to this conversation, but more hopefully, and share resources and ideas about how organizations and individuals can become more secure online. The panel will consist of myself. Kelvin will be participating, Stephen Lee from Okta, and Tom Malta from the Navy Federal Credit Union as well. And so we'll have sort of an expert panel. We'll talk about this topic and share best practices with the community. So that's at 12 p.m. Eastern time. 2 p.m. Eastern is a webinar hosted by the NCSA focused on the small to medium-sized business and why identity management is so important. And I'll be participating in that, as well as a member of the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. And then lastly, at 3 p.m. Eastern, we'll have an online Twitter chat, again, hosted by the NCSA at Stay Safe Online. And following the hashtag IDMGMT Day chat. This is all information you can find on our website. But that'll be more focused on consumers and how consumers can stay safe online. And we have identity management champions like LastPass and Norton LifeLock that'll be participating in that, as well as being led by the NCSA. So full day of activities, and hopefully lots of resources being shared across the community as well.
That's really awesome. So for those who nominated Jeff and I, thank you very much. And your checks are in the mail. And what I did want to ask Kelvin, there was a lot there that Julie mentioned that you guys are doing on the Identity Management Day. Kind of what other ways are you supporting this day, and kind of what is NCSA's kind of role in the Identity Management Day?
Oh, Jim, I often, when I talk about Identity Management Day, I think about, Bruce Springsteen and E Street Band, right? Like, Julie's Bruce Springsteen in this, in IDSA. We're the E Street Band, right? We're there to support. We're invaluable for sure, right? Benny needed the Jets, right? Hootie needed both. I could go on, but we're here to support our partners, IDSA and Julie, and so proud to do so, and so honored that they approached us with this idea. And so the NCSA, we are somewhat of major force multiplier for things in this area, in the IM space, cybersecurity space, data privacy space. And so we're going to leverage all of our resources, our member companies, the folks that we work with on Capitol Hill, to make sure the word gets out about Identity Management Day. And so that's a lot of what we bring to the table. People are able to go to our website to get a lot of no-cost resources, and I'm very specific when I say no cost. I don't say free because somebody's paid for it, whether it's our member companies or a generous grant from the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency at DHS. They provide these resources for us to be able to partner with IDSA and provide these resources at our website at no cost for people who want to take advantage of them.
There's nothing wrong with free. I think people will always be amenable to having free resources. And, plus you've got a cool, domain name, right? Stay safe online. That's easy to remember.
It's right in the domain name, Jeff. I mean, we try our very best to not only keep ourselves safe, but help others do that as well. And Julie mentioned a very key point in that. We do focus on individuals, and helping them, whether you're talking about families or communities, which are made up of individuals, right? So we try to cover 360 million Americans in the 50 states and 6 territories because they really need to understand, this information.
I'm curious, and this is maybe going a little bit off track, but from an advocacy standpoint, you mentioned talking about the individual. Do you ever get involved with advocating, on behalf of individuals for any identity type things with, governments or businesses or anything like that?
Yeah, certainly businesses, right? We're able to really help businesses understand what identity and access management, why it's so critical, right, to the enterprise security plan, and how it's linked to security and productivity of organizations. And so we're constantly advocating on behalf of, again, small and medium-sized enterprises, right? Businesses are one thing, but small and medium-sized nonprofits, small and medium-sized governments. We forget that there are small and medium local governments who they don't recognize, or particularly small governments, they don't have the bandwidth to necessarily focus on something like this. And so we come in, again, to be a force multiplier to help them out and certainly advocate on their behalf. That's
great. Julie, I had a quick question for you regarding Identity Management Day. Have you seen this be more of a kind of a U.S.-based response that you've seen, or have you seen a good international response to this as well?
Yeah, that's a good question, Jeff. It's definitely been an international response. I mean, we've seen organizations based in Europe. Actually, one of the organizations that reached out to be an identity management champion is Cyber in Africa. So, and it does run the gamut. So, geographically diverse, but also, kind of back to Kelvin's point, we've had a teacher within the Norfolk public school system reach out and say, hey, we're all about, helping kids understand what it means to go online and how to make sure that they're secure and the things they should do and shouldn't do. And so I thought that was really interesting. Today, I had the office of the CIO for the state of Iowa reach out and want to be identified as an identity management champion. So it's really kind of, it's across the board. It's been super fun to see the different types of organizations that have reached out and, wanted to kind of step up and say, we want to be an identity management champion. I did want to go back and thank Kelvin for the shout out. I appreciate your support, Kelvin, but I will say that it's been a total team effort, not just from the NCSA, but also Brad Shoemake, who is the identity management chair from corporate communications director at Centrify. He's the one that brought it to us. And he's had a number of resources in his organization helping out. And so, it's very definitely been a team effort. And so I guess maybe I just get to be the drum major.
Absolutely, Julie.
Well, I think it's always great to get recognition. And obviously, Jim and I have been fans of this since we heard about it for the last couple of weeks. I think the next step here is it's not just an international holiday, right, or a day of recognition. Maybe it is more along the lines of a galactic day of recognition. So maybe we can work on, interplanetary or interstellar recognition for IAM as it grows. One of the things that comes up quite a bit, and I think this is a big part of recognition, is how important people are to IAM. And maybe Kelvin, we can start with you. How important do the people play as a part of the IAM space?
I want your listeners to hear me very clearly here. They are the most important part of it, the most essential piece of it. And that's a little strange sometimes when you talk about technology and when you're talking about mitigating challenges as it relates to technology, because our instinct is to throw more technology at the challenges. We saw the early part of the technology evolution, if you think about Y2K being just 20 years ago and people waking up to how important technology was to our lives, we tended to see these challenges and say, okay, we need to build better products, right? And then once we saw that those products really they were helpful, but certainly not stopping all of the things that we needed to stop, we pivoted to processes, right? Okay, let's develop better processes. Well, the processes, again, helpful, but still not complete. So we went from products to processes. And then over the last couple of years here, it hasn't been long, over the last couple of years that people have said, people, that's a pretty important part of it. And hardcore technologists, right, have now said, you know what, we really need to focus on people, human behavior. How do we, and not people as the problem, but people as the solution. And so celebrating the identity management practitioner is so very important and appropriate, because these are the people who are on the front line of this battle, right? You have different battle domains going on, but on this battlefront, these are the folks that we need to be celebrating, because they've been working in basically obscurity, doing a great job for many, many, many years now. And now we have an opportunity to bring some recognition to the very important role they have. So that's why, in my opinion, people, they're the most important part of it. Products and processes, to all my board members and the folks that support us, absolutely important. But we have to do a better job of focusing on people. And I hope the identity management practitioner get that message on tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think it's important too to talk about that recognition. A lot of times we'll go into an organization and you've got this, I like to call it a loose collection of IAM heroes that are making things happen, right? Despite all odds, they may be the glue that's kind of holding things together. And I think it's important, to highlight some of those roles that are out there, because it is such a big part of an IAM program. Julie, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so I like to give a shout out to an organization that has emerged in the last couple of years, probably around the time we did, which is ID Pro. Which is all about helping to create more identity and access management professionals and to educate those folks. And they're a great organization. And so I kind of have joked about Identity Management Day, and maybe it also becomes Hug Your Identity and Access Management Professional Day. As well, because certainly, back to Kelvin's point, those folks need recognition as well. And, for the IDSA, we're focused on sort of turning security professionals into also identity and access management professionals as well. So by raising awareness that identity has shifted from this operational thing, and providing access for people to get to do their jobs, to really something that needs to be a core part of security, because identity is the easiest thing to get access to, and a hacker essentially just needs a valid credential in order to get into an organization and do some damage. So I completely agree about the people side, and hopefully everybody tomorrow will maybe virtually need to hug their identity and access management professional, since we're not back in an office quite yet.
Our listeners are the IAM practitioners of the world. This day is for you. We just got a big pat on the back. But for those of us who are in leadership roles, and folks who work for us are on the front lines of making it happen, I think what we're all doing is we're consuming all this great information and then making it relevant for our organization and enacting those processes and technology that actually make IAM possible at scale, we're really doing something important, not only for our organizations, but for society as a whole. So this day is for us, and it's about time, I guess. But thanks for Julie and Kelvin for kind of leading and pulling this together for us. We started something on a previous podcast that we want to keep trying, which is to ask to kind of go off track a little bit and ask a non-IAM question for fun. And so this week we came up with, if you were to be named Evangelist of the Year for something, what would it be? And I'll start. So if we're going to have an award for Jim McDonald Evangelist of the Year of something, it would be taking a midday nap. I know that sounds terrible for somebody who works, but I tried meditation, right? Because I thought meditation, everything I heard about it was so great. And then what would happen is I go into meditation and I fall asleep. And then I wake up and realize I actually just took a nap and I feel awesome. So I'd say start with meditation, give it a try. But if you fall asleep, set your alarm so you don't miss a meeting. And I think you're going to wake up refreshed. Kelvin, what would you be Evangelist of the Year for?
Oh, Jim, this is very easy for me. Evangelist of yoga. I'm a big time yogi, and so if I could be Evangelist of the Year for one thing, it would certainly be yoga. And if you said, well, no, that's taken, Kelvin, maybe Evangelist for making a great, martini, dirty martini. So yeah, those two things. And by the way, with Tito's, good American vodka there.
Vodka martini, then, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
How about you, Julie?
Nice. Yeah, so mine, I was thinking about this today. There's a couple things, but mine would probably be Evangelist, active travel Evangelist of the Year. So, and this is something obviously that I've missed quite a bit over the last year or so, but I, in the last probably 20 years, have taken about 11 trips, I guess, around the globe, which is cool, with a company called Backroads. So hopefully it's okay for me to give a little plug for Backroads, but they do an amazing job and sort of immerse you in an active way into a culture and into a country. And you get to experience it just in a very different way. It's typically, for me, it's on a bike. So I'm a cyclist. I like to bike, and it's just a super fun way to travel. And then at the end of the day, you've experienced this wonderful day and ridden on roads that most people aren't seen on, and then you can come and have a nap and have a martini. And I mean, it's an awesome way to spend a vacation. So I think that would be my award.
How about you, Jeff?
It sounds so cliche just because this is all I talk about. It's got to be like gadgets and doodads, I guess. I mean, I'm always playing around with something new. We talked about it in one of our previous episodes, the new microphone. I've got an audio mixer now. I mean, phones, laptops. I'm that nerd in the corner who is like, this is why I like Android over iOS, and this is why I like iOS over Android and Windows and Mac. I use it all. I have zero allegiance to any particular vendor. I just like the technology. So I guess I would be the evangelist for tinkering with, toys from that aspect.
And Jim, I will point out, our audience, obviously, this is audio only, but I'm able to see Jeff's background. And yeah, that'd be appropriate for him. So for the audience, he's got all these gadgets behind him and his cool, super cool microphone. So yeah.
Well, when you have a voice like mine, you have to do everything that you possibly can to try and make it sound as good as possible and hide all the bad stuff. And yeah, that is a green screen that it's not currently folded out at the moment, just in case, something were to come out for that. That's a really good question, Jim. So I'm gonna go with gadgets. So we've got naps, yoga, active travel, and gadgets. I think we've got all the food groups covered. I mean, what else is there?
Jeff, I liked it better when you turned to doodads.
Doodad? Well, it's a highly technical term. You probably wouldn't get it. So why don't we shift back to IAM? I think one of the things that is always interesting is, the future and what's coming up. And, speaking of doodads and gadgets, right, that's part of the reason why I like it so much is, what is next from an IAM perspective? We've been hearing a lot about different things, different types of identities, whether it is decentralized identity or blockchain or passwordless or, zero trust has really taken on a big approach and a big part of the mindset for security professionals, especially over the last, year or so. I'd like to understand, from Kelvin and Julia, maybe we'll start with Kelvin, is, what do you see as being next from IAM? Where does it go from here?
I'm going to totally borrow this from Julie, who just had a great thought about, I love the question, where do we go from here? I think we go from here, the basics, right? Keep it simple right now in terms of doing what we do well in IAM now. And making sure folks understand the basics. It's super cool to talk about new and next and the future and what's exotic. We're getting hammered now, right? And we know our major breaches, many of them, and are coming through compromised credentials, coming through folks who have their identity compromised. And so for me, what is new? Well, let's do really well what's old. So, and again, freely admit I stole that from Julie. So I'm gonna punt it to my friend and leader, Julie, to see what she has to say as well.
You totally stole that from me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we just recently published a survey at the beginning of February, and it was a unique survey in that we asked the stakeholders questions about access challenges they have in their organizations, and it revolved around granting access and revoking access to applications, onboarding employees, offboarding employees, et cetera. And from the stakeholder perspective, they are still seeing access challenges. Now, the granting access is really more of a productivity thing, right? But the revoking access is a security thing. And identity and access management, we've always thought of it as an operational activity. We're now shifting to it, in the last couple of years to really be a primary security focus. But I think it's important to recognize that from a stakeholder perspective, there's still lots of challenges out there. And so I've been accused recently of being old, in quotes, and pragmatic. And so I feel like where we need to be with identity management is providing the resources to help organizations be successful with the things that and the challenges that they have today. So I am, the IDSA is all about providing best practices and identity-centered security outcomes that can help organizations achieve those goals that they have today. I feel like sometimes we do a bit of a disservice and focus on the shiny object as opposed to really help organizations address, the here and now. So I think there are lots of people talk about where does IAM go from here. I think our organizations really need to be focused on helping the today, quite honestly. So maybe not as flashy as some answers you'd like to hear, but I really believe that that's important.
Well, I think it underscores, that report that you talked about. I think we briefly touched on it in a previous episode, and one of the things that jumped out at me was that security aspect, or how long does it take to remove access in a timely manner when someone leaves? Well, what does timely mean? But from what I remember from the report, it was, roughly only half of the companies were taking care of access either the day of the departure or even the day after, which means that there are still, a large number of organizations that are terminating access days, weeks, after someone has left. And that is risk right there for any organization. So, getting back to basics and understanding, that you have to crawl before you can walk, and you have to walk before you can run. You really have to nail the basics before you even should start thinking about some other things. And sometimes, I think organizations get distracted by the shiny thing, and they hear cool things like zero trust. Is it the wave of the future? Sure. Yes. Could you do it today? Maybe. It really depends on, what do you already have in place? How are you handling things from a people and a process perspective? Do you have the right technology to back up those types of concepts? And you really need to kind of take that stuff into stock. And I see things like blockchain and decentralized identity, right? Those have been kind of talked about for the last, it seems like 2 or 3 years. And I still haven't yet seen a good enterprise application for that, but I certainly see the application on the consumer side or a citizen side, or something maybe along education or health, things like that. But a lot of those organizations still are struggling with basics as well. I think one thing that has caught on maybe more recently, and this is something that I'll give a lot of credit to Microsoft and Apple for, is this idea of passwordless, being able to use biometrics to log in, right? Even people who aren't as into the doodads as I might be, is they can use Face ID, they can use Touch ID, they can use the equivalent on the Windows side, Windows Hello, to streamline the authentication experience, which at the end of the day is a good thing, right? You can have a much better security output that comes from that. Jim, what are you thinking from an IAM Next perspective?
I think what's happening in our industry a lot, it's always happened, right? I mean, from the time I got into the industry, there were companies that grew into kind of the powerhouses of the industry, Obelix, Netegrity, Sun. They get bought up by bigger players, and sometimes they become a new force to be reckoned with. Other times they kind of disappear into kind of ambiguity. You're still seeing that today where there's this consolidation going on. But what you're also seeing happening is these major platforms like ServiceNow, Salesforce, Microsoft, they want to be players in the identity and access management space. I don't think most companies are going to say, yeah, we'll go all in on ServiceNow, therefore we don't need Microsoft and we don't need Salesforce. I think a lot of organizations are going to find that they need all these platforms, plus there are other platforms, like Google and Amazon. And so does it become that you pick a platform that becomes your identity management set of technologies, or do you need something that glues it all together? Some other, best of breed technology that glues it together, or does Obelix, Okta and Auth0, do they become like this new mega platform, which is kind of what the vision that they've started to paint? So I don't know the answer, but I think it's really interesting to watch as our industry continues to evolve in this way. And what I found over my 15 years plus in the industry is that each time these consolidations happen, it creates a gap and it creates an opportunity for a new business to grow out of nowhere and become a major force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, we've certainly seen a lot of consolidation over the last few weeks, and I'm curious from the way that your organizations, Kelvin and Julia, kind of approach working with multiple vendors and multiple businesses, et cetera. What are some of the things that come to your mind when you see something like Okta making, I think it was $6 billion purchase, right, of Auth0, or CyberArk buying up a smaller or another IAM kind of company. How do you guys approach those types of events? Maybe Kelvin, we'll start with you.
To be perfectly honest, I see an opportunity to have another member of the National Cybersecurity Alliance, someone to join the family of the willing. But it's the nature of the business, right? It really is, in terms of when you create something really efficient, effective, smart. These larger companies want to take advantage of it, and I don't know if I see it as good or bad. It's just the nature of the beast and what we have today. And more times than not, we get better technology out of it, right? And going into the future. So yeah, I guess I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I think it's just change, right? But I think it is interesting to see how that we are kind of coming back around to your comment, Jem, about the platforms, right? Back when I got into the industry, it was Sun and Oracle and IBM, sort of the big platform players, at least in the identity space. And Ping was relatively new and trying to be a best of breed. And now I think we're seeing things kind of come back around. Maybe not necessarily those names that I mentioned, but we're starting to see consolidation and platforms being created again. So I think it's just, it's just something that we need to deal with as a member-driven organization or as member-driven organizations, Kelvin and I, that, it's just going to change. It just is the nature of the beast and technology, I think.
Yeah, I think this is the world we live in, right? You always have to be agile and be able to adopt change, where it's needed. You guys have been super generous with your time, and I want to make sure that, we respect that. Before we start to close things out for this week, maybe we'll just pass it around the room real quick. Any final thoughts for folks who are listening out there and in the international IAM space, as our show is? Julie, we'll go with you first.
Yeah, so I guess the last thing I'll say is, tomorrow, Identity Management Day, Google a couple of hashtags and I'll give them to you. And I think they'll also be on your website as well. But you'll see a ton of resources that are being sort of crowdsourced and contributed to the community around identity management and securing digital identities. And the hashtag is IDMGMTDAY. And the other one is, and this is the important one, hashtag BE Identity Smart, Be Identity Smart. So look for those two hashtags tomorrow, and hopefully you'll find some fantastic resources to help you succeed in whatever aspect of identity and access management you're involved in.
That's great. Thanks, Julie. Kelvin, how about yourself?
I'll leave it with a quote. I would leave it with a quote from the great Wayne Gretzky, who said he wasn't the biggest, he wasn't the fastest, he wasn't the strongest, but he was the best because he would skate to where the puck was going to be, not where it was, right? Not where it is, rather. He would skate to where it was going to be. And I think that's what the National Cybersecurity Alliance and certainly IDSA, that's what we're trying to do, help people to understand where the puck is going to be and actually, ironically, where it is now in terms of the challenges. And so I'll leave it one more quote, the great Michael Jordan, who said, individuals win games, but teams win championships. So you don't have to do it alone. Tomorrow, join us as we celebrate Identity Management Day and celebrate those practitioners who've been on the front line for so many years.
Hear, hear. I fully support. How about you, Jim?
Well, I want to thank Julie and Kelvin, not just for being on the show. I mean, I think that's obvious, right? We always are appreciative of our guests, but thank you for the contribution you guys are making to the IAM practitioner. And in particular with Identity Management Day, I called myself an appreciation junkie in the past. Just the fact of what the IAM practitioners are doing for their organizations. And you guys are out there providing resources, best practices, and material to help us with our job. And I think in all cases, it's free content, right? Just go on LinkedIn and follow these organizations, follow them on whatever social media platforms, get familiar with their websites and volunteer because they're doing great things for us. And, if you have the time and the ability, please give back.
Yeah, it's certainly well appreciated. There's nothing better than free content. And when you find content that's relevant to, your role in your organization and what you do, even better, right? So, thank you so much, Kelvin and Julie. And I think with that, that's probably a pretty good spot where we can leave it. If you guys are good with it, I'll have a whole bunch of different links in our show notes today. So wherever you're listening, you can scroll on your little screen and try to find the links there. You can also go to, the website, identityatthecenter.com, and find it there. So happy Identity Management Day tomorrow, Tuesday, April 13th, to everyone. And for more information, you can visit identitymanagementday.org. You can also visit staysafeonline.org. And with that, we'll go ahead and close it out for this week. And thanks for listening. Take care. Thanks for listening to the Identity at the Center podcast. If you like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe and visit us on the web at identityatthecenter.com.